From among the nations of the earth, God called out a man who is known to us as Abraham. God told Abraham to leave his home and go to the land he would show him. Abraham did as God said, taking all his people and possessions. God promised that Abraham would possess this land and become the father of a great nation. And through him, all the nations of the earth would be blessed. It was a peculiar promise, for Abraham and his wife Sarah had no children of their own. But Abraham obeyed God just the same and led his people to the land of Canaan.
Now Abraham and Sarah lived in Canaan for a long time, but they remained childless.
Don't be afraid, Abraham. I am with you.
Again, God spoke to him, saying that his descendants would be like the stars of the heavens, too many to count. Abraham believed God, and God counted his faith as righteousness.
I trust in you. Now I believe he will bless us with a son.
But how could God's promise to Abraham be fulfilled? For Sarah to have a child seemed impossible. Rather than waiting on God and his timing, Sarah gave her servant Hagar to Abraham, and Hagar gave birth to a child named Ishmael.
I name him Ishmael.
Eventually, just as God had promised, Sarah also bore a child from Abraham.
A son.
They called him Isaac.
I have a son. I name him Isaac.
What's he done? Take him away. They are brothers.
And Sarah became bitter toward Hagar and Ishmael.
Get out of my sight!
Abraham was distressed.
Abraham.
But God told Abraham not to be troubled, for Ishmael would become the father of a great nation, and through Isaac, God would fulfill his promise to bless all nations. And the years passed.
Now, in those days, it was a custom of those who trusted God to sacrifice an animal as an act of worship. This practice dated back to the children of Adam and Eve, who most likely had heard of the animal that was slain to cover their father and mother.
How would you make a burnt offering?
And so it was one day that Abraham and his son prepared to make an offering to God. Abraham's son was now grown and probably had done this many times before. But this time was unlike any other.
The day before, God had spoken to Abraham, telling him to take his son and offer him to God. Abraham was a man who obeyed God, but what was he thinking and feeling now? They had the wood and the knife, but where's the offering, his son asked. Abraham said, God will provide the lamb.
The Lord himself will provide the lamb.
And together they went to the appointed place. There, they prepared the altar and arranged the wood. God had not yet provided another offering. So Abraham bound his son on the altar. Still, there was no other sacrifice. So Abraham lifted his knife to slay his son. Then there came from heaven a voice saying, "Do not lay a hand on the lad." And there in the thicket was a ram caught by its horns. And so it was that God provided an offering in place of Abraham's son. This was a picture of the offering that God would one day provide for the sin of humankind.